It was the night before Halloween. It had been a good year for ghosts and haunts, at least according to my friend Chandra. She's always been one of those people who believe that if you don't experience something firsthand, then it can't be true or real enough. I never thought much about her beliefs until this year, when she claimed that some of the spirits on campus were trying desperately to tell us they're still alive, but trapped somewhere. So in order not to upset them any more than we already have, I guess I'd better go check out the haunted house after all. The campus seemed unusually quiet as I walked through the tall iron gates into the courtyard just outside of the library building, where the haunted house is supposed to be located. A large clock tower with its giant wooden gears whirled around, announcing each hour like an ancient grandfather clock from the Middle Ages. For once there wasn't even a hint of fog or mist hanging over the lawns in front of the dorms. No whispers drifting down from above, nothing but the usual crisp October chill in the air. There weren't even any other students wandering around looking for ghosts this late in the evening. In fact, there didn't seem to be anyone else here except me. I continued walking towards the dark structure looming ahead of me and wondering how long it would take Chandra to show up. "So what do you think?" I said aloud to myself as I peered cautiously inside the spooky old barn-like building. All the lights were off and only moonlight spilled through the high windows set far apart on both sides of the entranceway. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed something moving at the end of the hall near the back of the room, but whatever it was disappeared before I could get a closer look. "Are you kidding me?" I shouted suddenly when another one ran by me, then another. I had seen some pretty strange things while studying abroad in Europe, but these ghostly creatures looked more like dogs than anything I'd ever seen on Earth. They moved quickly down the hallway, then stopped at the opposite wall to wait, barking wildly now as if they expected someone to come out of the door that led deeper into the building. When nobody did, all three animals trotted away again, until finally fading completely out of sight around a corner further in. "Now I know why this place is called a haunted house," I said with a nervous laugh as I stepped over a rope stretched across the entranceway. It was too thick for me to slip under easily, so I gently pushed aside a chair next to the doorway and lowered myself down. A shiver went down my spine as the hair stood straight up along my arms and neck when I saw what lay beyond. Dozens of dismembered animal limbs strewn about the floor and hanging from hooks all around the walls. Mostly dogs' paws, claws, ears, tails and heads, and even two full bodies lying on tables nearby covered with tattered red cloths. The whole thing reminded me of a scene from one of those slasher movies you see on TV late at night, where everyone starts screaming or running, but there's nothing you can do except hide behind a desk or bookcase. So after glancing around again, trying to spot Chandra anywhere in particular, I had already searched all the surrounding areas thoroughly before coming inside. I hurried and quickly made my way back into the main hallway and towards the exit door. "Chandra," I called out as soon as I saw her walking down the steps from the second floor and headed directly towards me through the front door. "It's just us girls tonight," she said when we met face to face outside next to the rope stretched across the entranceway. She was wearing a black robe, which gave me the impression she'd been waiting for a long time for me to show up, or at least to give up on this whole thing and leave. Because usually Chandra is never early for anything. "Well, should we go back inside?" she asked breathlessly as she stood staring at me expectantly with her hands clasped behind her head. "Yeah, sure," I replied without enthusiasm, because I knew what she wanted to do with these creatures, who were still roaming about freely inside there. As soon as we walked back inside, I realized how ridiculous that idea was, though there were at least 4 of them moving about, and now they were even barking and growling louder than ever. It didn't seem to bother either of us much, though, not even the one standing near the front of the room on its hind legs, watching us walk by with his ears pointed straight forward. Suddenly another pair came out from a side door and rushed right past us before disappearing around a corner somewhere. The 3 that had come out first went running after them, and I had a hard time following their path. "There it is," Chandra said while pointing at a door. She pushed it open and stepped aside so I could see inside. Inside was an empty hallway, but the same brownish color as the rest of the building. There were no lights, only faint moonlight pouring through the window, and a few streaks of light coming through the door set off to each side. So all we really saw were our own shadows as we followed them into the dark passageway, until we arrived in front of the last door at the end of the hall. "We can get into the attic through here," she said calmly as she reached for the knob, then paused for a second and turned towards me. "Are you ready for this?" she asked nervously with a little grin on her face. I swallowed hard, afraid that if I spoke at that moment, it would have given away how scared I actually felt. And there were definitely some strange sounds echoing down from above. Voices whispering amongst themselves, scratching sounds from far away, clanking noises from everywhere at once, plus others I couldn't identify. All of which made me wonder just what might be hiding up there, waiting to jump out at us when we entered the attic. "So what's your plan anyway?" Chandra asked quietly after she had closed the door again and locked it securely. "What do you mean?" I replied with a nervous laugh. "You're the one who said it needed a ghost hunter." "Yeah, but," she started saying while fidgeting anxiously next to me, "this isn't exactly the way I pictured things happening." "What's wrong?" I asked her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she answered as she glanced back towards the door we'd come through. So we went walking through another long hall and stopped at an unmarked wooden door, with nothing more than an old iron key in the lock and a tiny brass plate affixed to the wood that read, "Attic." Chandra turned the knob very slowly, then pushed open the door and looked inside. It was completely dark inside and I could barely make out even the slightest of shapes or shadows. So she took my hand tightly in hers and pulled me inside. Then I heard her scream my name, and watched her sit down to her knees right on top of my feet. She was staring straight ahead into the darkness, still holding my hands firmly, trembling as though about to collapse at any second. "I'm sorry," she said as tears began flowing down her cheeks. "I don't know if you will ever forgive me." "It's not your fault, Chandra," I told her gently, but calmly, not knowing what else to say except for reassuring her. She stared intently up and across the room, where several beams of moonlight came shining in from windows set high up on the wall. "He's here," she gasped with wide eyes. "Who?" I asked, bewildered by her reaction, and unable to see anyone there. But then we both saw a large black shape hovering just above a workbench a few steps away from us. Something like a giant bat had somehow gotten caught behind the ceiling, hanging there upside down while flapping its wings against the rough-hewn walls. "She's all yours," she said while letting go of my hands and standing up. And when I glanced back towards her again after making sure it wasn't some kind of trick, she disappeared. I couldn't believe it. Chandra was gone. In fact, everything around me had suddenly changed. The air was thick now, almost choking me off, and I felt myself being lifted higher, until finally opening my mouth was impossible due to how much pressure was bearing down upon me. I wanted desperately to scream out for help, but found that I no longer possessed the power to do so, as though someone was slowly tightening their grip on my neck. So instead I closed my eyes tight, then waited for whatever might come next, with nothing but darkness in every direction. That lasted a little too long before suddenly I opened them again, only this time they wouldn't stay open either. They remained squeezed tightly shut in a vain attempt at keeping the darkness at bay, even as it started to take me deeper into its clutches.